Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Jane Lawrence and I come with a lot of juicy content. In this video, I will be telling you everything that you need to know about cervical orgasm. You know, our juicy parts are truly amazing. I tell you this for a fact, from hiding so many different pleasure spots inside them to the explosive feelings you get from each of these hidden treasures. And yes, I mean more than the infamous G-spot that people are still till today debating on whether it exists or not. It's simply amazing, and no wonder women scream or cry during intercourse. For real, guys, God has blessed us with so much treasures buried inside of this juicy part, and it's just ridiculous that a lot of women do not get the chance to experience this God-given pleasure that has been buried inside of us. You know, according to medicine, there are up to like 7 different orgasms that women can have, that we are capable of having. Can you imagine that? But today we're going to focus on just one spot in particular, which is called the C spot, or you could also call it the spot responsible for the cervix orgasm. Now, I know that I have said it before that when you hit the cervix too hard, it can be painful for most women, but it's interesting to know that if you do it right, you can give your woman mind-blowing orgasms. Now, cervical orgasm is an orgasm that women can experience from penetrating the cervix. Now, we know that the joystick doesn't usually go inside the cervix because it doesn't have a wide enough opening for the joystick or even a finger to pass through. So the cervix looks like a donut with a tiny opening that allows for menstrual flow. But then again, the pleasure comes from stimulating or bumping into the cervix opening during deep penetrative intimacy, either with a joystick or with a toy that is long enough to reach the cervix. Some women might be able to stimulate the cervix with the help of their finger if it's either long enough or their cervix is lower than the average position. And it's also important to know that the cervix changes its position inside the juicy part depending on the menstrual cycle of a woman during your period. During your period, it's going to be lower and more sensitive, while closer to your ovulation, it's going to be a lot higher and less sensitive. Now, I know that there hasn't been many studies done on the C spot. Of course, we know about the A spot and the G spot. But then again, it has been mentioned in one study in 1985 where researchers have found out that some women can orgasm through cervical stimulation, but it's not widely known. It's not widespread. And the funny thing is that most people often think that cervical orgasm is also the A spot orgasm because the A spot is very close to the cervix and it needs a deep penetration to be stimulated. And once you can get the A spot and activate it to cause a climax, it oftentimes provides a full body intense orgasms. All right, but I tell you for a fact that the A spot is far from the cervical orgasm. Just like with everything in sex, not all women will feel pleasure from cervical penetration. Some might love the stimulation while others might find it painful, like I said earlier. But you as a man, you have to be enlightened enough to know how to hit it to get the desired result that we're looking for. Now, let me try to explain what it feels like when you luckily get a man who gives you cervical orgasm. The feeling you would get will be quite intense compared to what you get from the clitoral or G-spot orgasm. And the feeling is kind of like a deep full body orgasm that starts at the cervix and it rolls in wave through your full body. Now, one thing that I think that everyone agrees on that has had this experience or this type of rare orgasm, and I call it rare because not everyone knows it exists. Not everyone can experience it. Not everyone has experienced it. So to those who have experienced it, they agree on one fact, which is that orgasms are much more intense and fulfilling, just like in the case of prostate orgasm in men. It almost feels like having a very pleasant seizure. Sometimes it will feel like your whole body is convulsing. And you know that blankness that happens during orgasm, right? At this point, it becomes deep and more intense and more lasting. But then again, it can be different for different women because we're not all the same, all right? Honestly, I would say that it's hard to exactly pinpoint the difference between orgasms, because when you're stimulating your cervix, chances are that you are at the same time stimulating the G spot as well as the A spot, all right, and even the powerhouse. Remember, the powerhouse is a clit, right? And I think it's because of this reason that's why women experience a much more intense, fulfilling orgasm that overcomes our bodies during deep cervical orgasm. So in other words, it can actually be a sensation from the blended orgasms that you're experiencing from both the A spot, the G spot, the powerhouse spot, and of course the cervix orgasm, all the same. So I just think that it's not only the cervix orgasm alone that you experience. You experience a blend of all three or all four spots that are going explosive. Now, from stats, only about 35% of women say that they have experienced an orgasm from cervical stimulation, and that could be as a result of low awareness, or these percentage of women that have experienced it by mistake. But while I know that cervix orgasm might not be for everyone, because it makes some women uncomfortable, you can still explore and see whether you're the one who can possibly enjoy this type of experience. So how do you experience this kind of orgasm, right? I mean, that's a very good question. Number one, I think that you could go on to explore by yourself. I mean, the best way to know what to enjoy during sex with your partner is by first exploring it by yourself. The same goes for cervical orgasm, you know. So to stimulate your cervix, you would need to really penetrate deeply. And the obvious truth is that most people might not be able to reach it with their fingers alone. And this is where toy comes into play. So I would advise you to use the G-spot stimulator that has a considerable length. You could Google G-spot stimulators, because I can't display them here if I really want this video to be monetized. All right, so there are sleek G-spot vibrators designed specifically for deep penetration during solo play. And then make sure that you're really spending time on foreplay with yourself before you try and approach your cervix, because it might be very uncomfortable if you're not fully aroused, or it might, you know, cause you to have cramps, okay? Also, play with the erogenous zones that feels good outside of your body, like, you know, your twin tower, your powerhouse, all of those things that get you really turned on. You could play with them so that you get properly wet. And then you could slowly move inside. You could play with your G-spot and then move further deeper until you reach your cervix. The cervix is just the end of your juicy pot, all right? That's the part that, you know, separates your juicy part from your womb, all right? So stay there. So when you get to your juicy part, when you get to the end of your juicy part, you just stay there and slowly rub the cervix, or use, you know, the vibrator on the lowest point. You could also increase it as your body adjusts to the pressure or to the vibration that you feel. Then you stay there until you explode. It's that simple with toys. And then number two, when you know that you're ready to experience some deep penetrative intercourse with your partner, it's always important to communicate your needs to your man before trying anything out, all right? You would want to proceed slowly to ensure that the intercourse is not painful or it's not uncomfortable. And then again, you would also want to spend time on some considerable amount of foreplay before you even attempt, you know, deep penetration. So if you are basically very unsure about the penetration with your partner, you might even want to try to introduce him to some toys that he could use. Let him use the toys or vibrators on you, but you will have to guide him and see what feels best for you. Also, communicate and be verbal during the exploration with your partner, because that gives him direction and it also gives him feedback, so that he knows how you feel, what you want, what doesn't feel good to you, all right? Don't just keep quiet. He's not a gynecologist who knows the anatomy of a woman's juicy part. So show him how to get there, by the things you say, how you produce sounds and all of that stuff. Number 3, you need to indulge in foreplay, because why not? I mean, all sexual experiences are so much better when you're, fully aroused and turned on. So don't skip on the foreplay before cervical penetration, because this is the only thing that can make or break the whole experience for you. The cervix is very, very sensitive. And for this reason, many women, even those who have had regular cervix orgasm, say that they have to be very, very aroused for it to feel pleasurable instead of painful. So set the mood, schedule enough time for some foreplay before intimacy, and explore your partner's and let them also explore you before you jump into deep penetration. It might even be a good idea to start with, other types of orgasm, like the powerhouse orgasm, before you move on to deep penetration. Do you get what I mean? And then number 4, you've got to find the right position. When you're aroused, the juicy part tends to expand in size. So deep penetration might not be as easily achievable as it looks at first glance. So you really want to make sure that you're taking advantage of different positions and experiment with what hits the right spot or what hits the spot. And some of the most reliable positions for deep penetration are, of course, the doggy style and the cowgirl, either the regular or the reverse cowgirl. So by now, as a woman, you should know that being on top of your partner allows you to experience deeper penetration, and it also puts you on the driver's seat where you control how much depth that you could go or how much depth that you could take. And it also gives you the ability to control the angle and the pacing so that you could truly explore and see what feels the best for you. So if you're also able to have intercourse on some of your furnitures, then getting a pillow might also be very helpful, as it will allow for positions that, allow your partner the ability to really dive in while still giving you comfort, especially for doggies, right? You can use the pillow and just put it so that it could raise your backside up for him to dive in deeply into that right spot, depending on how deep you are. And number 5, you should try experimenting during different times of your cycle. As I mentioned earlier, the position of your cervix depends on your menstrual cycle, and it even affects how sensitive it is. So it might be a good idea to try deep penetration during different times of your cycle so that you could find the best time and what feels the best. Because some women might experience that they hate having deep penetrative intercourse during their period because their cervix is much lower and it hurts, all right, because it's sensitive at that point in time. If that's the first and the only time that you try deep penetration, then of course you might be disappointed. And again, your cervix is also softer and wetter during your ovulation, so it might be a lot easier to experience pleasure during that time of the month. So try different times of the month in different positions before you decide whether cervical orgasms are the best for you. And if they're not, don't get upset, darling. I mean, there are still plenty of other types of orgasm at your fingertips that are just as mind-blowing and as great as, having a cervical orgasm, okay? All right. So that's it for now. Let me know in the comment section if you've ever experienced this type of orgasm before, or you're willing to try. All right, until I come your way, remain blessed, and also subscribe, hit the notification bell to get notified whenever I post a video here, and I'll be right back in your screen tomorrow.